It's finally here, some meaningful update about the public test realm, or PTR, of Diablo 2 Resurrected. So in this video, I'm going to go down and check out these meaningful updates regarding the PTR and explain a bit more of what that might mean. And of course, we can't get through any video without me inserting my opinion somewhere. So it looks like the upcoming PTR 2.4 test goes live on March 2nd and will focus on ladder functionality. We knew this. We knew that this would be just around the corner. Looks like they picked a date for it, which is March 2nd. I would imagine if it's anything like last time, we're going to have between 2 and 3 weeks of testing, potentially before the next step, either ends or maybe, fingers crossed, we get an actual ladder launch. So that would put us probably at somewhere around the 3rd week of March that, by the soonest, that ladder could actually go live. This is just speculation on my part, but I think it might be a very real thing. Who knows? We will see. So there's 3 big things that they're focusing on in this PTR update. And the first and biggest thing that they want people to test is the ladder season. So we're going to check that out and see what kind of changes are coming down there. There's also Uber Diablo updates, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to be happy about. And then, of course, based on a ton of community feedback, they fixed various balance changes and updated this patch accordingly. So here they talk about ladder testing, and the TLDR on this is that they're going to reset ladder multiple times during this PTR. Players can actually use the chat commands ladder or help ladder to retrieve season start and end information, which is something we've never before seen. If you can actually tell when a ladder is going to end after it's started, this is something big. People kind of have a date in mind to plan for, especially with the next step in this, which is basically how ladder stashes are going to work for your character. Basically, you're going to have an entirely separate stash for ladder, and basically once ladder ends, you'll have a very limited time to pull all of your items from that stash, from ladder stash, over onto non-ladder. You won't be able to put anything into the ladder stash. You can only take away from it. Very good, liking how that's sounding so far. On to these Uber Diablo changes. All right, so just reading down through, they didn't really change anything about how Uber Diablo spawns. You still have to sell Stones of Jordan. Really wish they would change that to Standard of Heroes. Still waiting on a point for that little item there. But regardless, what they're doing is they're making this more server-based or more region-based. So instead of having individual servers that people have to hunt for, which is way more complicated now in D2R than it ever was in LOD, instead, what they're doing is, it seems like they're making this regional. So if you are on, say, the North America server and you're playing on ladder or non-ladder, it appears as though the SOJ sales there will directly affect that division. If anybody sells a load of SOJs on North America on non-ladder, no matter what server they do that on, Uber Diablo will also spawn in your game. It looks like they're also doing something to let users know and help them anticipate when Uber Diablo is going to spawn. As they say right here, given this change, we have added new messaging for players to help them anticipate when Uber Diablo may spawn. It will be sent out to all players in the region at certain tiers of progress, whatever that means, and can be manually checked by using the /Uber Diablo chat command. You can now tell how many SOJs have been sold by using a chat command. This is actually really cool. What do you mean at certain tiers of progress? Like, you know, if someone is just entering hell, do you send them a message like, hey, 124 SOJs have been sold on this server, so you might not want to progress through the game. Or heaven forbid, they're like in Act 5 trying to do bail, and do they get a message like, hey, you might want to go find another game before you tackle your bail waves here, because if you don't, you're absolutely fucked. GG though, overall love that change. So next up, they've done some class balancing here. They've changed some of these classes based on feedback, based on people's opinions, yada yada. Let's check out how much damage they've done. All right, so animation for Impale increased by 30%. Good. Skill is still junk. Plague Javelin, it looks like they rebalanced this so that it's no longer capped at a certain second interval. Instead, it's capped more like it was in the previous patch. This basically nets more damage. Great. Multiple shot, added synergy from guided arrow, plus 12%. What? 12% of physical damage per level? Dangerous. Immolation arrow, reduced cooldown by 40%. Good, probably could just take it all away. Guided arrow, added synergy from multiple, they what? And then with guided arrow, they what? They added synergy from multi-shot, plus 12% physical damage per level. Back in 1.10, the reason why they made these changes and they gave these synergies to all these other bow skills is because Zons used one of two skills, right? Multi-shot or guided arrow, and some of them might use strafe in certain circumstances. But it looks like instead of addressing that problem, they're actually just exacerbating it with going back to how it was back in the uninteresting days. You know, I shouldn't say that. It was the days where the old programmers wanted people to kind of switch away from multi-shot, guided arrow, strafe, that sort of thing. And if you don't think strafe was used or even is used in the current patch, then either you don't PvP or you haven't seen the power of strafe in certain situations. It's definitely been used for quite some time, but that it is not apparently known by the people that made this patch, because they also added some synergies to strafe from multi-shot and guided arrow. Look at this. We just got a concoction of the most commonly used skills. Zons are gonna look the same and hit twice as hard. Awesome. Scary for PvP, but CJ's Tully Boa Zon's gonna be getting a lot more fucking toes, I can tell you that right now. Looks like they didn't do a lot with the assassin right here. Good, fuck sins. Look at what they did to Sword Mastery. They renamed it to Blade Mastery, and it now affects daggers in addition to swords. That's pretty sweet. They also increased the attack bonus on a lot of these masteries here quite substantially. This is really good because, in my opinion, barbs need buffs bad. Oh, and look at what they did to Throwing Mastery. Look at this. They made it so that they added a chance to not consume quantity per level up to 50%. That's a direct suggestion from the old D. Brunsky, I believe. Look at this guy. Druid. Remove the Hurricane skill requirement for Armageddon. I think that's actually really cool. There was no need of going down both sides of the tree there. The Druid skill tree was one of the most efficient skill trees ever, unless you wanted to use Armageddon, because then you had to like go down the other side just to stat Hurricane and go over to Armageddon. Long overdue change. I think that's really cool. Summoning. Druids can now have Spirit Wolves, Dire Wolves, and Bears all summoned at the same time. Ooh. The restriction of the Druid being allowed only one type of summonable at a time has restricted the viability of this build and has hampered the fantasy of a Druid summoner from living up to its full potential. Now, you know what it is hampered? It is hampered the people that don't want to do shit and just want to walk through the game and have their pets kill things for them. We feel that a Druid being able to summon all of his allies at once will make for a more interesting and fun playstyle. Look, particularly, I don't give a shit. Like, it's a summon druid, but like, what are we trying to do here? First, it was the Oredan, where you could walk through the game and literally not cast anything and kill. But now it's just like, okay, well, as long as you cast before you step on the waypoint, you can still walk through the game and do nothing. I say whatever. Like, I'm curious to see where this goes. I just think using the words interesting and fun on a summon druid was your first mistake. All right, the Necromancer. Let's see how this one goes. All right, on to the Paladin. All right, Holy Fire. This is a big one. Changed how the proximity bonus for area damage is calculated. It will now deal 200% damage to enemies at melee range. And they bumped up the fire synergy from 18 to 21%. So like, oh, well, okay, let's just recap on this for a minute. Mid PTR, they were like, all right, dude, we kind of messed up on that Holy Fire thing. You know, that might be a little too much. And now they were just like, nah, man, we'll just scale back the range. All is fine. It's really good to know that we learned our lesson on the Holy Fire. Holy Bolt now damages demons in addition to undead. I think this is a very good change, and I think they should undo the cooldown for FOH because of that with PvP in mind. They didn't, though. FOH just does more damage to demons in addition to undead. Well, I mean, whatever. Well, We'll see how it goes. On to Mercenaries. Basically, they made it so that Act 1 Mercenaries now act like Amazons, basically. They can use Amazon bows, and if you have anything that gives plus to Amazon skill bonuses, they also receive that. That's kind of sweet. A new ferocious barbarian is available for hire from Qualkek. These warriors cannot use two-handed swords, but are well trained in the art of dual wielding. Utilizing the frenzy, taunt, and iron skin abilities, they lure enemies in and unleash a fierce barrage of attacks. This is cool. This is what the Act 5 mercenary needed. Bravo. Oh my God, they did it. All of my bitching and complaining and probably other people who they actually listen to is bitching and complaining actually paid off. Plague can now be used on claws and daggers in addition to swords. All right, dude. All right. So since we're catching a serious nerf with this patch, I think this evens it right out. Fair trade. Ghost Sins, Trap Sins are going to love this. You can now actually obtain end game Ghost Sin and or Trap Claws without having to find the rarest, most GG magic and rare claws in the game. This is a good change. Infinity, Obedience, and Pride can now be used by spears and Amazon spears. Why not Insight too? What's your whole thing about Insight? Like, we gave it the bow. We're not giving it the spear. Level, area, and monster updates. So they increased unique monster density in the new level 85 areas. Good. 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 This is what the game needed. The challenge was like, level 85 areas were not only good for MFing, but they're almost crucial to leveling your character. And one of the things that was sort of wrong with some of these new level 85 areas was just the density. On a lot of them, you would struggle with the density. It was going to be very hard to find the monsters that would make going to those areas be worth it. If depending on how much they increase this could be very good. I'm really pumped about that. Hopefully it'll make leveling in these areas a little bit easier and, you know, obviously dropping items a lot easier. Good change. Apparently a lot of people were marking themselves as offline, so they just shortened this command right here. Nobody wants their friends to know how much they play Diablo 2. So now instead of typing /set availability offline, you can just type /offline. I personally appreciate that. For the Barbarian, they fixed an issue where your attack speed while dual wielding could be incorrectly calculated depending on which hand it was held in or in which order they were equipped in. I hope you gave far more thought to fixing that issue than you did telling us about it. The Druid Solar Creeper will now properly consume corpses and restore mana whenever the Druid is missing mana. That's cool. Did you fix the fact that it absolutely taxes your opponent's frame rates out and lags them so much when you're dueling? That's a thing. GG. Again, I think I'm really happy that, you know, Blizzard is focusing on changing such an epic and classic game here. As with any game designers, I gotta say, be in control of your game. Don't let people control your decisions and what you do. You should be testing this game and playing it and seeing what's fun and seeing what's engaging, you know, more than letting people dictate how things should go. One thing that I've learned from creating content and listening to people online is like, A, some people are dumb, and B, a lot of times people just look for a venue to bitch. Like, you don't hear from the players that are actually enjoying it like, wow, hey, keep this up. You know what I mean? Like, this is really cool. You always hear about everybody who has a problem with something. So that makes sorting through feedback for any of this stuff extremely difficult. But my biggest gripe with all of this is like, we talk about, if you're going to talk about underutilized skills, you know, and the things that people don't use and trying to make the game more viable all around, I think the real conversation has to come in the skills that people actually don't use, not the ones that they bitch about, right? So like, for example, with an Amazon, guided and strafe and multi-shot, anybody who's ever done any PvP knows that those are and were the big skills that people were using. That's nothing new. You know, as for the Necro, again, you know, bumping up the Bone Spirit damage there is probably unneeded. It wasn't a skill that was not used. It was just used in a different way. And I don't think we can forget about, you know, the skills that are used in PvP and are very effective. And I'll say this again, You know, as I've said in some other videos, not all skills in Diablo 2 were meant to be PvM skills. Some of them were meant to be for PvP, such as Bone Spirit, such as Guided, such as Strafe even. Yes, there could be an argument that Strafe was meant for PvM as well, but it's also extremely effective in PvP. Regardless, there are some skills that got absolutely no love that nobody uses, such as Poison Dagger. Where's the change on that? Like, you know what I mean? People weren't using that. It's still a garbage skill. Like, why not make that cool? Again, overall, super excited that changes are coming down the pipe. I'm sure that, you know, as a community, we can respond, we can talk about, we can get this figured out. You know, remaining cautiously optimistic about this. We shall see how it goes. We'll see you in the PTR, friends.